We reconvene at Liberty Conspiracy Audios. It is, of course, Liberty Conspiracy at iTunes and libertyconspiracy.com on the internet. I'm Gardner Goldsmith, and it's good to know that there are a lot of other people plotting for a freer society all around the world, whether you be in Belgium, and I know you are, whether you be in Hawaii or China or Japan, Sweden, thank you for listening, all the way down into Germany, Spain, Brazil, Chile, or in the United States or Canada, anywhere around the world. It's all part of human nature to want to be free. So thanks a lot for listening to us. Don't forget to visit the website and chime in on some of the subjects that are being posted in our forum or some of the blogs that are being posted by our Cabal members. If you want to become a Cabal member, all you have to do is click on the link that says Donate to the Conspiracy. Support the Conspiracy. It helps us buy the space on the internet to carry all our audios and spend the time to update the website and do all sorts of research regarding some of the issues that are breaking. Well, we've got a continuation of an analysis that was inspired by some of the breaking issues that are out there, a longer-term analysis. And before we get started, let's hear about some of our sponsors for the audios, and for that, we're going to turn to our old pal, Tom Brokaw.
Well, hey, you Gardner. The Liberty Conspiracy is brought to you by Al Gore for all your global warming needs. By the Cosminator. When you can't understand Bill Cosby, the Cosminator is there for you. And by inflation. Inflation. It'll grow on you.
Thanks, Tom. Okay, this is part 3 of my solo excursion into the exploration of the concept of rights and government and law. And after we conclude this, we're going to be turning to interviews with Cabal members about this subject, some of the people who support the conspiracy, to whom I like to turn very often. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn to the third part of a piece that I concluded. I finished writing, took about 2 hours last night, putting this together, and it will be posted after this audio is posted in text form as a blog at Liberty Conspiracy, so you can read the entire article. You can read along with the audio, and or you can just pass it on to friends, whatever. So this pertains to the idea of rights, positive rights, negative rights, and the idea that government is formed to protect your rights. And we concluded with a brief conversation about the 14th Amendment. And I'm just going to go back about a paragraph or so we sort of dovetail what we were talking about yesterday. I said, but if one has a right to the fruits of someone else's labor, one is saying he can make a slave out of that person. He can control his neighbor's private property and force him to act according to his wishes or the wishes of the majority behind the government. How can such a concept exist in the modern world? And is that how we arrive at such sloppy language as that of New Hampshire Governor John Lynch when he says homosexual couples will receive the same rights as heterosexual couples? How is it that people have come to misread the 14th Amendment so that they now believe it says there shall be not equal protection under the law, but equal treatment? A change that shows us Americans believe government is not there to protect them and their property equally, but to give them things equally. Clearly, people should understand that no one has a right to the fruits of another person's labor or his physical being. Rarely do people walk up to others and point guns at them to get them to hand over cash or make them engage in a certain kind of work. Yet this is what they do indirectly through government. In fact, government can be said to be the greatest mechanism of evil man has ever created, because it allows people to prey upon others indirectly. It shields them from the horror and immorality of their own coercive and predatory actions. In fact, it lauds them for engaging in this indirect violence, calling it community-minded and civic, as they vote to have their neighbor's salary stolen, or his property regulated, or his job manipulated, or his contract with another rewritten against his will. Upon close examination, it seems evident that it is not simply the buildup of welfare programs and subsidies, government schools and bailouts, federal cabinet posts and regulations that have led to this prevailing attitude among Americans that they have rights to things provided by government and therefore provided indirectly through majority-sanctioned slavery. Certainly, once such policies are established, they tend to cause a snowball effect, making more people assume that they're legitimate and inspiring those same people to call for government to clog even more areas of peaceful societal interaction. Government intervention and theft begets more acclamation, which begets the further loss of people's ability to see free market alternatives. Even as resources get squandered, as opportunities are lost, as businesses get regulated until they move overseas, voters get used to the state doing this or that and don't even consider that there might be a different, more ethical, more efficient way. But the problem cannot merely stem from the existence of government programs. For the earliest programs did not pop out of thin air. They had ideological origins and sprouted from people who successfully convinced voters that there was a proper role for government in letting theft and coercion masquerade as societally beneficial. What's the cause? Regardless of the long-held, long-sold myth of so-called limited government, it is clear that the origins of the problem lie within the most basic, widely accepted rationale for the existence of the government, that the state is justified in attenuating your rights in order to protect your rights, that it can take from you in order to create the police force that will protect you from takings. Tyranny follows because the facade of so-called limited government created to protect your rights is a fallacy. It is itself tyrannical. The state can only exist by taking revenue against one's will. If one voluntarily offered his money, then it wouldn't be a state. It would be a business, a market participant that rose or fell based on how it catered to the consumer. The popular notion promulgated by small government conservatives that traditionally we, quote, voluntarily give up some rights in order to protect the bulk of the others, end quote, is a myth, plain and simple. Try not giving up your money when the tax collector calls to tell you there's a new police contract. Government is not a voluntary organization. It can only exist by infringing on your rights to your property and your life, even as its boosters tell you that it exists to defend those rights. No moral system can rest upon a tautology. And as admired as they have been over the centuries for their radicalism in favor of supposed individual liberty, people such as John Locke and Thomas Jefferson are guilty of the most fundamental errors supporting this conservative fallacy. A fallacy that starts the ball rolling towards oppression because it excuses oppression and tells you it's for your own protection or that you voluntarily accepted the premises. In Locke's second treatise, the foundational document upon which modern societies rest their beliefs in natural rights, he states that men have certain innate rights and form government to protect those rights. He notes that, quote, no man should be deprived of any portion of his property without his consent, end quote. But shortly thereafter, he defines the offering, writing, quote, and by his consent I mean the consent of the majority, end quote. So in both cases, he overlooks his own contradictions. One can't protect his rights by having them suppressed. There's no trade-off if real voluntary trade is out of the picture. Government isn't trade. In a similar way, Thomas Jefferson's heroic and legendary document, the Declaration of Independence, missed something profound as well. Jefferson rightly said, quote, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, end quote. I wrote down here, I said, funny, as I typed this, I almost wrote that tall men are created equal. It's a good thing Jefferson proofread. Just a little aside there when you read the article. Anyway, unfortunately, Mr. Jefferson added the following mix of myth and abbreviated logic to the Declaration. Quote, that to secure those rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. End quote. There's the myth, which we have studied earlier, but which requires us to expose more fully. No government exists due to the consent of all the governed. If that were the case, it wouldn't be a government. It would be a private business, only getting revenue from those who freely offered it. And here's the final important portion, where he halts in proper logical analysis by saying, quote, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. Now, Jefferson later adds that it is the duty of people to abolish tyrannical government that works against their liberty, which has to do with his belief in God and natural rights. But it is the study of government power and the options reserved to the people which are important to our analysis. If Jefferson had fully